What's up, guys? Who Needs a Meta here, coming at you with another retro deck profile. Today we're going to be looking at Norberto Leon's second place YCS Seattle Undine Mermails for September 2012 format. This was before the release of Cosmo Blazer, so we hadn't gotten cards like Tias yet, so this was not a combo deck. It was very much a control deck, and we'll get kind of right into the list here. This is one of my favorite formats. There were agents at this event. There's just shock lock, wind-ups, things like that. So this is a really fun format. And because this deck came back, Macro Rabbit saw a return to counteract this deck whenever it get that matchup. So we have a very, very abbreviated Mermail list. We just have the 3 Megalos, the 3 Lins, and the 2 Pikes. We didn't have much beyond this. We did have Gund at the time, but because there wasn't like a lot of crazy rank 7 plays you could make with Gund, because there just wasn't that many. You didn't have like lead or Tias, so there was no real big rank 7 play. This was just more of a way to put, monsters out on the board and kind of control the board that way. So that's just our Mermail lineup. Very small, very concise, but it gets the job done. For the Atlanteans, we have our 3 Dragoons. This is our main searcher. This is the card we most send with Undine. 3 Marksman. This is a really good target off Diva, but it also pops set cards, and it can work with an OTK where you can summon from the deck. We can get our goons from deck. And then we also have 2 Infantry. We can pop face-up cards with this, but we can also, it's a double summon effect for other Sea Serpents. So essentially, if you summon one off Diva and you had another Diva in your hand, you could summon that Diva, and you could make a bunch of synchro plays. Or you could summon, if you had Diva and Marksman, you could use that to make a level 7 by bringing this out and then summoning the Marksman. Or if you had this and Diva, you could summon this first, then summon Diva and bring Marksman out. So there are a lot of different ways you could get level 7 synchro monsters out, or, use the infantry effect to, summon twice. We do have the Undine engine here, so we have our 3 Genex Undines and our 2 Genex Controllers. This is our solid normal summon of the deck. Undine is a really good card. If you go back and play this format with modern hindsight, I talked to some people from my locals who went to this event who played this deck, and they said there were people fiendish chaining Undine. They were, veiloring it. People who really just didn't know what this card did, that it sent for cost, kind of things like that, and how to play around it. So they were basically playing against this deck very improperly. A lot of people cut this format off at Return of the Duelist as opposed to Abyss Rising, and I prefer to play with Abyss Rising because they think this deck just blows everything out, when in actuality it just doesn't. It's not as overpowered as they say. We have just two Deep Sea Divas. We don't really need much more than this for our combo. A lot of decks like to play 3. I personally like 3 just because I like having the tuners, but this list does play 43 cards, so it is kind of big, so I can understand trying to cut down on that. 1 Moulinglacia. I remember seeing a lot of lists, or like ban list predictions, talking about trying to ban this card, and then you get Cosmo Blazer and it becomes an afterthought, which is kind of funny. A lot of people called for hitting Undine in this, and they become just not integral parts of the deck anymore one set later, which is pretty funny. And then the last monster is just 1 Tragoedia. Dragoons adds 2 cards, or if you send Dragoons off Undine, you add 2 cards, so Tragoedia can be pretty big. We do side deck Max Z as well. I will be showing the side deck for this video. This is one of the few decks that I do have the entire side deck of, so we'll be able to take a look at the side deck. On to the spells here. 1 Salvage. This card is really good when Diva was at 3, but again, we don't need to play 3 Diva because we can just salvage in the back, and we can... this is another easy way to go +1 and then make a 7, so because you have to use 2 cards from your hand to make a 7, essentially. And Gungnir is just such a good card, especially because it's a water monster and it discards for cost, so it will trigger all your Atlanteans and things like that. So this is kind of basically your 3rd Diva. 1 Pot of Avarice. This card is live almost turn 1. Most of the time turn 1 or 2. You just dump so many monsters. Reveal Megalo. That's 2 monsters in your graveyard right there. Summon Diva. That's 2 more monsters right there. So, 1 Soul Taker. Chaos Dragons weren't really too popular at the time, But the fact that Light Pulsar is 25 and Megalo is 24 can make it really difficult to deal with. That and Shockmaster is 23, so they're most likely going to call monster effects. So you can't reveal Megalo or you can't Diva into something to be bigger than it. So you have an out to Shockmaster because Shocklock windups are just so prevalent. Some staple stuff here. We got some Dark Hole, Monster Reborn, Heavy Storm, and 3 Mystical Space Typhoons. This card is also really good in the mirror because you can hit the sphere when they activate or when they flip sphere. You can chain it and destroy it. But you really need to be able to hit things like Defissure, Macro, Soul Drain, just anything that prevents you from playing the game. It's just very difficult to play with those floodgates. So we need to be able to deal with those, and that way you can target Marksman with other things, other set cards. So we have a lot of different back row destruction. On to the traps here. We have our 3 Abyss Sphere. Pretty staple here. Just summon our land from deck at the end of the main phase, and then at the end phase, they both died. It's important to remember that you can't activate spells while this card is face up on the field, so plan that ahead accordingly. 2 Mirror Force and 2 Torrential Tribute. Just a heads up, if you look up this list on top decks, they forgot to add a Torrential. So this list does play 2 Torrential, but if you look at the list up on top decks, it will be missing one of them. There was a lot of big destruction going on, especially with the 2 Mirror Force, 2 Torrential. Gungnir destroyed 2 cards. Black Rose is really prevalent, so we have 1 Starlight Road just to protect all of our cards. Again, Heavy Storm also legal. And then the last trap card is 1 Solemn Warning. This deck also really loses to Dark Hole because you don't have a lot of protection built in with your monsters. They don't protect themselves or anything like that. We don't have Draco Sec yet, so there's not a lot of stuff that we can make that we can protect ourselves with. We'll go on to the extra deck now. Synchro monsters. We have 1 Armory Arm as R4. Equipping this to Gaios is absolutely hilarious. 1 Catastor for 5s. He did not play Librarian, which I think is interesting, to not go with the double Diva play, but I guess I can understand when you're only main decking 2 Diva, despite the Salvage play being, if you add 2 Divas back, you have that draw 1 card play. No 6s, so for 7s, we have 1 Black Rose, and then we have 1 Gungnir. 1 Scrap Dragon for 8s, and then we have the Stardust Dragon that we summon off of our Starlight Road. Making it is relatively difficult. You need a Goons in your hand that you're willing to summon and not willing to discard, because essentially you have to go Diva into Infantry and then Infantry with summon Dragoons, but a lot of times we don't want to summon that Dragoons. We want to discard that Dragoons to search more cards. So these are very situational, or at least Scrap Dragon to start us, we have the Road for. And then the last Synchro monster, we have 1 Mist Wurm at 9s. For rank 2s, we have 1 Gachi to just kind of like a defensive card to wall up, buff up all of our stats. 1 Daigusto Phoenix. It can target itself, and it can target Stardust if you do happen to summon that off the road. A lot of people don't remember it's wind monsters, so that is another way to get in a lot of damage. For rank 3s, protection, we have 1 Zenmaines, and we also have 1 Leviathan Dragon. This card will trigger Marksman if you detach Marksman off of it, so that's a really cool interaction. So you'll be able to make your guy bigger, and since your detaching is cost, you get to pop a set card. For 4s, we have 1 Abyss Dweller. This card absolutely annihilates the mirror. And then 1 Gagaga Cowboy for, not necessarily just for time, but just to do extra damage that when we don't quite get there with our OTK plays. And then for 7s, we have 1 Big Eye and 1 Gaios. And we will move on to the side deck here. We have, for hand traps, we have 2 Veilers and then 2 Maxis. The Wind-Up, Shocklock sucks for sure. This event actually was won by an Exector, so Veiler is pretty good against that deck as well, obviously. That deck wasn't nearly as focused on Hornet because Hornet and Dragonfly are both at 1, so they were mostly an Exceed deck, so Maxi actually did hurt them a little bit. And then the last monster is 1 Fossil Dino. This is really fun. A lot of people think you're setting a Lind, and then you just blow up their whole board if they just go all out. It's pretty funny. So that's it for the monsters in the side deck, just those 5. For spells, we just have 2. We have the second Soul Taker And then this card was really cool in the mirror. We have 1 Mind Control. The fact that you could reveal a Megalo and then take their Megalo, and then you can make Gaios and force them to, neg really hard in order to get rid of your Gaios if they don't have, like, either one of these or a Dark Hole or something like that to, get rid of it. Traps. Again, we have 2 Dust Tornadoes. If you're playing against Macro Rabbit, you're going to want to hit that Macrocosmos. You're going to want to hit the Floodgates. You want to hit the Spheres in the mirror. This card is essential for allowing you to basically play the game with Floodgates. This deck is so susceptible to Macrocosmos and things like that. We have two Mind Crush. So Shark and Megalo are reveal effects. So in order to hit those, if they go Magician, Shark, and you just Mind Crush the Shark out of their hand, I believe Magician still would trigger, but the fact that the combo kind of stops there is really nice. And even if you can't even hit multiple Sharks because it discards all the copies of it. So it's not like, oh, you get rid of 1 Shark, but they have the other Shark. You've Mind Crushed all of the Sharks. So that's why this card is really cool going first against that deck. 1 compulsive for dealing with monsters we don't want to deal with. Again, you could draw this against an established board, and you can get rid of it. So going second is not a bad card at all. And then the last trap card, we have 3 Gozen Match. Again, a Floodgate. This card is not very good against Chaos Agents. That deck can actually side this as well. They don't necessarily need their Dark Monsters. They mostly just need Hyperion. But this card does absolutely annihilate Wind-Ups and Rabbit. So there will be a duel or 2 in the description below. Like and subscribe for more retro format content. And thanks for watching, guys.